Episode of the Tool Shed podcast, beaming into the Tool Shed, obviously, and all sorts of other social platforms like YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook, which is pretty exciting. In this episode, I'm very much looking forward to speaking with our special guest. His name's Joel Kean. And he is the current president of the Master Pool Builders Association of Victoria, also has a pool building business. And I think it's important to speak to people in all parts of the building industry because there are common and different challenges. And one of our purposes, I guess, is to get as many different people from different parts of the building industry to come and get involved in the conversations in the tool shed. So one of the things that we've always thought, and now we're starting to do something about it, is to get different parts of the building industry involved in conversations, because unfortunately everyone seems to be in their own silos. And for, on a job site, for instance, the electrician causes problems from the plasterer, and the plasterer causes problems for the painter, and everyone's kind of pointing at everybody else. And we figured, since we started getting conversations going in between different trades and builders and so forth, getting to understand from other side of the situation can and really often help. So we're trying to create these conversations. But love to introduce Joel to the conversation. Joel, tell us about firstly your business. What's it called? Where is it? How did you get started?
Not a problem. So we're called Aqua Dreams. Aqua Dreams with the Z. I have to remind people of that too often. I wish I'd thought of that when I registered it.
Yeah.
We've been operating now for 16 odd years.
Wow.
I actually started the business when I was 22. Got into the industry, I was 19. I met my wife in Sydney at an international convention, actually.
Yeah.
We started a long distance thing, and 6 months later, I had an opportunity to move up to Queensland. I was living in Montrose with my parents, and I had a job with a mate's brother-in-law who was doing pool interiors around Brisbane and Sunshine Coast, which is pebblecreting, which is an interior lining for a lot of concrete pools. So there was a job to go to, a place to stay, and 2 years of doing that up there. I was a little bit of a hoon when I was younger and into my cars, and unfortunately, I lost my license. I had to move back to Victoria. Worked with another pool renovator. It was a good lesson because I actually learnt what not to do, because that particular renovator, the way he operated, he went against everything that I kind of stood for and the morals and principles that I was raised with from my parents. His attitude was get out, get paid. Quality was not the focus of his business. No, not at all. Communication was very lacking, and I suppose, I learned something, which was what not to do. Went from there to a pool building company. I've got to insert there actually that my wife moved down 6 months after I moved down, and we got married at 22. And then at a year with a pool building company in Croydon, a very, very knowledgeable pool builder. People skills weren't there, but I learnt a lot in a short time. And I always knew, even when I was at school, I was going to work for myself. I'm not sure what drove that, but I just knew that I was going to be my own boss at one point. And the opportunity presented itself, and so I started Aqua Dreams. Pool renovations and interiors was the business at that point.
Yeah, it's funny how many people, like carpenters working for a builder or whatever, have that very similar experience. They sort of look at their boss and go, I think I could do it better. And in some cases, that's the truth. And it does happen. In a lot of cases, they're just as bad, if not worse, when they start their own business, because I guess they don't realise everything that comes with running your own business. Like, you don't have those responsibilities when you're the employee, but man, oh man, it's a steep learning curve when you start your own business. What were some of the things that sort of hit you in the face when you started your own business that you didn't realise?
I couldn't agree more. In fact, if I had my time over, I'd really reconsider how I've gone through my working career. But I'm here now, and look, I do have a passion and a love for the industry. Um, Things that I think should be almost mandatory is for anyone that registers a new business and is showing that they're actually active and operating, is to sit through a business management course. I knew how to do the physical work.
Yeah.
I was very good at dealing with the clients and contractors and whatnot, but the financial side of the business is where I lacked.
Yeah.
So I found myself in a position where just silly things like not understanding that builder's margin is not what you pay yourself out of as wages. And so I found myself dipping into my GST account to pay trades. And the thing that I'd always do before paying myself was make sure that I had no creditors, so trades and suppliers, and whatever was left was for myself. And sometimes there wasn't enough. So my parents, who I did work for during school holidays when I was younger, and a year after school full time, they had a furniture business producing solid timber, wine racks, CD and DVD stands, supplying JB Hi-Fi Australia wide, and
Wow.
a few other boutique furniture shops. And the Chinese importing really affected them, and their stuff was being copied. And again, long story short, they ended up selling their business and brought into mine and joined me. So the kind of role reversal a little bit. And Mum has an accounting background since she was at school, and a very, very good one at that. Down the line, very honest. Sometimes it used to get under my skin, but I cannot be thankful enough for the skills that she's brought to the business. And quickly I learnt that I was doing everything wrong financially. So sorted me out. I cleared an ATO debt. And they've been with me ever since. So Dad is still full-time on the tools at 61, which is incredible. Huge asset to the business. We call him Simon the Likeable. He gets along with everyone and can strike up a conversation with the stranger and become mates. He seems to know everyone, and every client just has nothing but praise for how he is on site and with people.
It's kind of unusual having the son as the business owner employing the parents. Normally it's the other way around.
Yeah, look, we are all shared directors and equal owners, but I suppose we do have our roles. It is even now still sometimes hard to say this is what you're doing and how you're going to do it and when you're going to be there. And but look, I've got to give credit's due. He's taken that on extremely well, and in the early years we butted heads, but we've just continued on, and it's only getting better as years go on.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Now, as you heard in the introduction, one of our goals, objectives with the tool shed is to bring as many different perspectives into the conversation, because when we first started as Builders Business Black Belt, we only ever spoke to builders, and so and we still have programs that are kind of, at least Builders Business Black Belt is just for builders. Blueprint is kind of for any business in the trades-based businesses, but the key is to start to have conversations and start to hear perspectives from the other side of the fence. So whenever you're talking to builders, they're always complaining about subcontractors, and ancillary businesses and all that sort of stuff. But when you start to talk to, the electrician or the plumber or the pool builder or whoever, it seems like that the builder throws a few spanners in the works from time to time. It just depends on which perspective you're listening to. Everyone seems to point the finger at everybody else. So it'd be really helpful, I think, to hear from your perspective what are some of the challenges that you run up against when you're working with builders. So, for instance, if you're on a new project and part of that project is a pool for a new project versus putting a pool in for an existing home because you're working directly with the customer at that stage. But what are some of the challenges you run into working with builders on a new site?
Look, we don't actually do a great deal with house builders, and that's by choice. And I suppose this is very relevant to you. What you're discussing is different points of view from different trades. And the reason we don't do a great deal with house builders is because, well, a few reasons. The one main one is, unfortunately, amongst our industry, it's a very small industry, the pool industry, and us builders talk to each other a lot. And there is a lot of, in the past, house builders who have burnt financially pool builders. And the reason, and it could be something completely unrelated to the pool build, but if the house builder has a contract with the owner and there's an issue unrelated to the pool, but the owner's not paying the builder, builders unfortunately have this, and not to say all, of course, but if I'm not paid, I'm not paying, it just goes against how we operate. It goes against ethically as well. I could never do that myself. But because we're such a small family business too, if we were to take a hit even on one job, it would hurt us in a fairly big way, depending on what size job it is. So we try to minimise our risk as much as possible.
Yeah.
Also, builders too, they sometimes can be a little demanding and not understand the time frames required and the lead times that we need to book in contractors, no matter how much we try and communicate it. So the communication sometimes can be very short, and we need it done yesterday, or we need to work.
Sounds like what they sometimes say about their clients. The builders saying that the customer doesn't understand the timelines and the lead times and all that sort of stuff. The builder becomes the customer and adopts the same approach.
So yeah, exactly right. And sometimes too, there's if the builder is the one that's employed in us, or we're contracted to them, and we don't have any direct contact with the owner, sometimes things are either not passed on or passed on in such a manner that is maybe not correct, whether it's intentional or not, and it can cause conflict and things just go wrong from there. So we've always been very much one to, if we work with builders, where possible, we like to still have the contract direct to the client. Or if we are working with a builder, the client signs the guarantee of indemnity in the contract as a protection for the financial side of things. We've only ever had 3 builders that we've worked with regularly, and that's just been something that we've built up relationships with over time, and we just have a trusting thing there where we wouldn't say guarantee the job, but that we know that they're backing us and we back them, but the communication's there both ways, and so the job goes fairly well. We also work with builders that have similar mindsets. It's all about service and quality and communication. It's not cheapest wins.
Where did that come from? Because that's as soon as I hear that, my ears prick up, because in the tool shed and in builder's business black belt, the focus is always changing the builder's perspective from to understand what their real product is, and you speak to most builders and ask them what's their product, and they'll say it's we do knockdown rebuilds, or we do second floor extensions, or we do this, and it's like, but that's not it. Like the product, the builder's product is the quality of the client's experience. The house is the commodity. That's not the product. The clients
Mm.
after that experience and that protection and that support and that guidance. Where did you get those thoughts from?
I've always tried to put myself in the client's shoes and what's the best experience they're going to have. And I had this very discussion with a contractor this morning with the pool plumbing, and we were discussing how this is our standard way of plumbing a spa, and he said, I don't know why everyone doesn't do it like this. Well, it's all about the cost, and he said, I just can't imagine it. And I said, well, I think about the experience of the user and also functionality and ease of use and everything else other than the bottom dollar. But we have to work through the clientele to find those who value and appreciate that. But you would be absolutely amazed at how many house builders and architects send us plans via email requesting a quote with this is the dot points that we want you to quote on, and often copied and pasted from another pool quote, um, without even putting faces to names, expecting me to come on site, um, see what the access is like. It's gobsmacking. But I suppose a lot of them operate like that. And to me, if they're happy for me to quote a pool without even having a single phone call, meeting on site, site inspection, it's best price wins. So I don't even make the effort.
Mm.
When I say make the effort, I kindly respond and say, this is our process. And more often than not, it's you get nothing in return. So we've probably dodged a bullet anyway because they're not the ideal clientele that we're chasing.
This is fascinating for me to hear that, because it's almost the identical conversation that I will hear when I'm talking to a brand new builder that's not in any of our programs, about the challenges that they're having, and they can't understand why a customer could even expect them to put a price to something when they haven't been on site, they haven't had a conversation, and yet they're expecting somebody like yourself to do exactly the same thing. The other thing that and I'd love your thoughts on this, I don't know whether it happens in your business or other pool building businesses, but one of the things that we teach our Blueprint members, who eventually become black belt members, is that you never ever do a quote for free. Like, we actually treat it like a separate project, and I'd assume it's the same when you're putting something together yourself. That number one, it takes time, but number two, it takes experience. You've probably got to reach out to other parts of your trade, the steel fixers or whatever, to get a price from them. So you're kind of wrangling other sub trades and so on and so forth. And at the end, you put together something that is valuable for the client. It's taken time, it's taken experience, it's taken knowledge, and it represents value for the client to say, I understand exactly what I'm going to get and exactly how much I'm going to pay. So they have confidence, versus a free quote which is full of guesses and assumptions, which isn't worth the paper it's written on, because when they start the project, it's like, oh, well, that wasn't in that quote, that wasn't considered, that's a variation, that's an extra. And so your $500,000 expectation blows out to $800,000, and you didn't have the budget for it. So, but if you spent a couple of $1,000s on figuring it out properly in the first place, you would be able to modify it. And is that something that you've considered with your business or in the pool industry?
I actually have been not advocating heavily, but every now and then I'll bring it up with other builders. And there's the verbal support, but no action. And we tried to action it a few years ago. So we went with a 50-50 scenario where we try and charge 50% and the other obligation free, as everyone else does. So we didn't completely cut off our work line. And it didn't really go very far because, unfortunately, we were the only one asking for a fee. Now, I was also aware that you can't just simply ask for a fee and provide a simple quote. But in saying that, our quotes, when you compare to others, especially the volume builders who have a 2-3 pager, dot points, very little detail, low initial price with extra, and a lot of hidden fees that the clients aren't aware of. Whereas I spend a lot of time, and it's normally a 9 to 11 page proposal with a lot of detail, very site specific, with a lot of thought into it. And if we're charging, I thought, well, we need to provide even more so. So, be easement details of the assets, and which would cost us a little bit of money and time, but just show them too that we're extremely thorough, detailed, we'd laser the site for elevations, so there's no surprises. But yeah, difficult because no one else is trying it. Well, in the pool industry anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, and this podcast isn't meant to be a coaching session, but if the opportunity presents itself, one of the things that we've always found, and you've absolutely hit it on the head, is that you can't charge for something that is kind of the same as something that people expect or have experienced getting for free. And so I always use the analogy of going to your regular restaurant. It's good quality food. You like the people there, nice environment. And you go there one day and you look at the menu to order your normal meal, and the price is 25% higher. No explanation, nothing. You just go, yeah, no. You're not happy with that. Versus going to your restaurant that you traditionally go to, and the maitre d' greets you at the door and says, Joel, we're so happy that you're here because some things have changed, and we'd love to have your feedback on your experience, and you go in and you can see that they've changed the environment, that it's a brand new menu. They've said that the chef has been outsourcing wonderful, tasty, organic, high quality ingredients. He's completely changed the menu, and it's all incredibly tasty. We've got this dude who knows everything about wine. He's going to match the wine to the food. We've redecorated. We've got all new seating and all that, and music, and we can't wait for you to tell us of your experience compared to how it used to be. And you go in there and the food's awesome, and the bloody, wine perfectly matches it, and you're very relaxed, and it's a wonderful atmosphere. And you pay at the end, and it was 25% dearer than what it used to be, and you don't even care, because the experience was completely different. It was a completely different product. You're not just banging a price on something that you traditionally got for free, and that's the way that we present that, and it's exactly what you said. And if you can find a way to present your 9 or 11 page thing with the laser, the site, so you know that what the elevations are and all that sort of stuff, and then it's presented in such a way that the end user or whoever your customer is, if it's the builder, for instance, can see, that's going to save me a ton of time. It's going to save me a ton of grief. It's going to protect me from the problems that I've gotten in the past working with other pool builders, and there's a fee involved, and they know that up front, so that fee can be passed on to the client, and it's represented in such a way to the client that they are missing out on all of these potential problems and unnecessary costs. Everyone's a winner, baby. And it's like the feedback that we get from our black belt builders is exactly what you said before, like with the plumbing of the spa. Why doesn't everyone do it this way? When the black belt builders' customers experience the paid proposal process, which isn't a free quote, it's a paid proposal process, and it's got a process to it, they all say, why don't all builders do it this way? In fact, we're starting to get feedback now that I wouldn't trust a builder who does a free quote. That's what some of the clients are now saying.
Well, maybe in the building industry, hopefully that will start to trickle down to the other subcategories of building. Like you said, there's many builders now able to introduce it. And I think too, a challenge with our industry is, the value of the projects compared to a house build. Sometimes the clients may not feel that it's worthy of a fee, and they can. And two, unfortunately, there's too many pool builders that are happy to quote off a plan without all those things I mentioned earlier, and they go straight to the price. So I've also introduced a few years ago a preliminary questionnaire, which
Yeah.
it was initially introduced as a bit of a time saver.
Yeah.
So it would qualify us to them and them to us. And there's a few strategically asked questions that will give me a bit of a gauge as to what kind of client they are before we arrange a site meeting and whatnot. And sometimes we can nip it in the bud without even going that far. But there you can also see that we are preparing for the site meeting and we want to know some things about not just what they want, but how they're going to use the pool. Is it going to be year-round swimming? Is it for fun activities? Is it for aquatherapy? What do they value efficiency-wise in terms of power use? And all these things have a bearing on the design. Even if they have a design, that might not fit the way they want to use it. Trying to create doubt in the mind of the consumer about the other quotes because they haven't gone to all this effort. But look, it's a long slog, but it sounds like there is traction building out there, and if more of us keep talking about it, hopefully one day it will start to, come through to us.
Absolutely, and that's the whole purpose of having these conversations, and it's something that we've talked about in Black Belt, and it's starting to get some traction that the builder should be investing in their subcontractors to say, here is X amount of dollars to, and paying for the contribution to the overall proposal for a project, because you can't expect the client to pay the builder for a proposal and then the builder go and expect the subcontractors to put their part together for free as well, because it's taking the subcontractors' time, it's taking their knowledge, it's taking their experience, their intellectual property, and all of that should be paid for. Like, you need to be remunerated for giving your time, your knowledge, your experience, your intellectual property, because it can, done properly, it can save the builder a heap, it can save the customer a heap, and potentially, using your example of there are a number of ways to plumb a spa, as an example, like, you do it one way, it causes problems in the future for the end user. You do it another way, those problems never ever raise their head. Isn't that worth discovering and investing in at the front? Because you're not comparing apples with apples. You might think, well, one's a spa and the other's a spa, but one's going to work completely different.
Exactly right, and it's something that we're always stressing to our potential consumers is exactly that, apples for apple comparisons. And 99% of the time, we are higher priced. I can always give them two or three other builders who are going to be another 30% higher again, but we try and put ourselves in the middle of the market, but we're normally on the higher end of things. But then if we're given an opportunity to actually help them compare and understand the differences, very soon we can show them dollar value differences in how we're going to build it and why we build it that way. It's just filtering through those consumers to find those that are willing. But too often now we are finding after the fact, we never abuse the knowledge that we might be the only one looking at it. We'll always pretend that we're competing against someone, so we keep it honest. That same applies for who you are or where you live. It doesn't matter. It's the same for everyone. But yeah, they'll often say that we knew straight away that you were going to build our pool before we even got the quote. So it's finding those ones that I think we work hardest at to try and avoid spending time on those that are price driven.
Yeah. Want to change hats?
Yep.
So I've been speaking to Joel with your Aqua Dreams hat on, but you're also the president of the Master Pool Builders of Victoria on your second year. And I just want to get an understanding of, from your perspective, the importance of having an association and the importance of members being connected to that association. So obviously, if you've put your hand up to run the show for the last couple of years and sit on the board and basically donate your time and your knowledge to an association, you must feel that there's value for the existence of that association. So how come you're a part of it?
When I initially joined all those years ago, it was seen as an association that if you're affiliated with, you are a step above everyone else. You're a quality pool builder with a certain set of criteria that you're held accountable to. It was something to be proud of as well. And back then, so we rebranded 2 years ago, but we were known as Spas of Victoria, or Swimming Pool and Spa Association of Victoria. With new competition with a very similar name, we've rebranded as the Master Pool Builders Association of Australia. But the benefits extend beyond just something that you can advertise to consumers. Myself, I've always been very much in the industry, and that's just out of, I suppose, passion for the industry. But I found myself being surrounded by builders that have been doing this longer than I've been alive, and more than happy to share their knowledge as I was coming up and learning and avoiding potential pitfalls, and just sharing the knowledge and having builders basically like mentors where you could call and say, how have you handled this? How do you do this? And now I find myself in a situation where I'm able to help builders in a similar situation. But we also get the support with all the changes in government regulations and Australian standards, and they're forever changing. So we need to communicate that to all members so they know exactly when the changes are taking effect, how it affects their business, how to implement it. So they're on top of that. And we try and maintain a certain standard of member too. So we don't just accept anyone that applies. There is a fairly heavy vetting process that we go through. It goes out to existing members as well for feedback. Make sure that you lead all legalities as required with your CDBL, your DBLs, insurances, and just make sure that it's all about the consumer having a good experience, the builder having the support to be able to produce that experience. And it's just a network that's been, this is 60 years this association's been running. And look, we've got not just pool builders, we've got service techs, we've got fences, inspectors, pool shops, the list goes on. And we've got a lot of experience that we can call upon. Even if a member has a query that I may not be versed well in, we can always call on someone else that is, and it can help. Yeah.
What from someone thinking about jumping into an association, what are the benefits that they will get from it? You've already mentioned, there's a lot of knowledge there, but I'm assuming that they can get some sort of legal support. Do they get any sort of how to run a better business type support with the association as well? What can they expect?
One of the best things that we get feedback from is our training courses. So we have a lot of short courses available from pool construction essentials, hydraulics, basic and advanced, chemistry, basic and advanced, and a lot of others that are held throughout the year, multiple times a year. They're one of the biggest benefits that we find, a huge advantage. we do have that support. We do have a legal firm behind us, I suppose, that we call on. It's not so much like the master pool builders that we have a lawyer on call for members, but we are there for the builder. So if that need is there, we do have someone that we can call on to assist, that's worked with this association for many, many years. And just little things like, we've invested a lot of money into things like DocuSign, which is digital contract software.
Yeah.
That the builders don't have to pay a subscription for. We have basically covered that for the members, and they just pay per contract that they use. But we've got a membership manager that is always available on the phone, or even come to your office and give you a one-on-one training session as to how to use DocuSign. Because many of us, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And the paper versions worked fine, but technology is advancing.
I've been chiseling it into granite for years.
Exactly right. And we're all guilty of that at some point. And two, that there's a sense of camaraderie. We have some social events throughout the year. We've got our AGM this month, and we'll have some guest speakers in as well. And then we've got our golf day. We've got our awards nights. We have beers and banter at the Notting Hill Hotel around the corner from the office, just for general networking. And myself personally too, I've always been one where I believe we should be sharing the knowledge, because if we know there's better ways of doing things that will help us all, that helps the whole industry. Whereas if we're one that maybe a bit selfish in, well, that's the way I've learned to do it, and I'm not going to tell anyone else how to do it because they're going to use it against me. If the consumers out there are not having the best experience possible, then they're not going to tell their friends how good it is getting a pool built. So if we all share our knowledge for the benefit of everyone, then I hope that the consumers have a great experience and they say how good it is getting a pool built. And go back 15 years ago, there were certain pool companies that really made it hard for us as a whole industry because they didn't operate very well and we got a very bad name. But I don't think it's as bad as it used to be. But you're always going to get those rogue operators, but we try and keep those out of our association where possible.
Yeah, but unfortunately, it tarnishes the industry, even if they're out of that organisation and they give a customer a bad experience. Unfortunately, everyone cops the flack from that. But I'm interested in your thoughts about community. Like, I love that whole thing about sharing knowledge and the sharing of that makes the whole industry and everybody better. I know in Blueprint and in Black Belt all the time, people are sharing their resources. Like, I've seen things where it might be a process or a procedure that it's taken them 2 years to build a process, a whole 20-page document, and in Black Belt someone will go, oh mate, you can just have that, bang, change the logo on the top. It's just saved somebody 2 years. It's amazing, and sharing feedback and data. And I mean, what comes to my mind is I'm a mad keen sailor, and I watch a lot of the Sail GP, which are these mad 50-foot catamarans, country against country that almost broke the 100-kilometre-an-hour barrier in the regatta before last, which is extremely fast on water in a sailing boat. But there's I think 9 different countries sailing at the moment, and all of the technical data from each team gets shared to every other team, like during the regatta. And so the Australians were dominating the regatta, so everyone got to see what was going on. It's a little bit like the data that you get at V8 supercars and Bathurst. All of the G-force data and how much pressure was put on the brake pedal and where was the steering wheel at that particular corner, and you can overlay one driver against another, so you can improve that driver against the gold standard driver. They're doing the same in Sail GP. And I can't help but think that in an industry like the building industry or the pool building industry, being able to overlay the data of one pool builder against another pool builder so everyone gets better, it causes the whole industry to improve, to be seen as far more professional. The benefits of that are obvious for the client, but that should be obvious for the builder as well, as far as a lot of problems just disappear. So building becomes more enjoyable, it becomes more profitable, it gets a better name. I think that is so important. But I'd love to hear from your perspective, obviously being that committed that you've taken on this role in the association. How important is it to have community, like you have beer and banter and golf day, all that sort of stuff? How important is that for the betterment of the industry as well as individual businesses?
Well, drawing on my own personal experience, if I didn't have that, I'm sure I would have made a lot of mistakes, a lot of costly mistakes, which then transcends to client experience. And it probably would have maybe taken some of the enjoyment out of it as well. I really get a kick out of talking with other fellow pool builders and sharing our experiences and advice, and maybe avoiding some of those pitfalls that we didn't even know was possible on certain kinds of jobs when you think you've seen it all. It's hard to describe how invaluable that is. If I was alone in this without speaking to fellow pool builders, it'd literally be trial and error, and there is no apprenticeship for what we do, which is something that I'd love to change overnight, but it's a slow burn. But getting a bit off track, but there's a huge lack of recognised training for what we do. It's sometimes the second largest financial investment behind buying a house is building a pool. The average pool cost now is in the hundreds. When I say hundreds, you're looking at minimum 100 now for anything fairly basic. Well, I say that for our business. You might get some volume builders a little bit lower. But there's no TAFE course, there's no apprenticeship, and you cover such a huge, broad spectrum of trades. You've got to look after steel fixing, formwork, concrete, tiling, membraning, electrical, excavation. The list just goes on and on and on, and it's something that you don't learn. I'm learning now, all these years later, and continue to learn, and that's something that I enjoy as well. But yeah, without that community, boy, it'd be a hard slog, I tell you.
It just, I'm just looking over in the tool shed now, and we've got 4 or 5 people watching this live in the tool shed. Like, there'll be a ton of people that will watch the replay, and a lot of them will be builders. And what's striking me with this conversation is you sound just like a builder, but what the builder doesn't perhaps understand when they're talking to a pool builder is that they're basically talking to someone that's exactly like them, that they have to now manage all of these other sub parts of just the pool project. And they just see it as one little project, but the pool builder has to manage the electrical and the plumbing and the fixing and the concrete. And it sounds very, very much like building a house, except it's under the ground instead of on top of the ground. It's probably the only difference, really.
Yeah. Look, house builders too, if they haven't had much experience with pool building, it's easily I can forgive them to thinking that's, you dig a hole, you put some steel in it, you concrete it, you tile it, and you put some pumps on it, and away you go. But there is so much more to it. I mean, if you want to do it properly, there is lots of house builders that actually will take the pool bit on themselves, and they will manage the contractors. Sometimes, I won't say all the time, problem with that sometimes is because they don't have their own experience in pool building, they're relying and trusting in the trades that they find either on the internet or from some other builder that they're going to do a good job. They know what they're doing, and won't have the experience to pull them up if there's something that's not quite right. And they're not giving it the focus that a dedicated pool builder will, because they're doing the whole project, and maybe the house is the focus and the pool's the kicker, or easier to reduce the overall cost for the client. But it's a whole set of knowledge that is more than just the simple dig concrete, tile, and fill it water.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, asking about the purpose, like having quality communication with the client to find out really what the purpose of this is, what's driving them to do it. That's something that we're constantly saying, with the house builder. You've got to have that deep conversation with your client and find out what the purpose is or what the priorities are. And it's just interesting that, you say that, and if a house builder takes on the project for building a pool, they're probably not asking what the purpose of the house is. They're definitely not going to ask what the purpose of the pool is. And then afterwards, it's kind of a plain vanilla experience, like, yeah, we got a pool, but we've been over to these other people's place and they really thought about it before they did it. So how important is that conversation between you and a builder? And I know you said that you don't work with a whole lot of home builders, but you do work with some. How important is that conversation to have with your builder if you don't get to speak to the homeowner when you're doing the design?
Look, it really is something that only the homeowner can answer. So if the builder's involved, he really has to be just a conduit for these questions. But where possible, if the pool builder can have contact with the homeowner for at least just this portion of the job to understand how they're going to use it. We see all the time amazing designs from architects, and they're stunning, but they may not be very practical. They may not physically work the way they've drawn it, or they intend on it working in their mind. There's things called physics that you just can't get away from. Hydraulics often aren't thought about. Litres per minute, flow rates, head pressures, elevations, the list goes on. Quite often we'll get a design, and after asking these questions, the design is not completely changed, but if they end up telling me, well, we value efficiency immensely, and we're going to have X amount of kilowatt PV panels on the roof and this, that, and the other, then we can design the pool heating system, perhaps a pool cover they didn't even think of or knew was possible with the different covering options available, the running cost savings, the heating potential, the list goes on and on. So all of a sudden they've gone from something that was only really useful in November through to March, depending on the season and what the sun's doing on the day, to something that can be used as many months as they want at the temperature they expect it to be, guaranteed, at a very efficient way that pays for itself very quickly. Even things like depths, you get some families and they've got this great long pool and it goes from one depth to the other. You can only stand in the first third, and then you're wading water for the rest of the length of the pool. And you say, well, okay, you've got kids and you're a social family and you entertain, et cetera, and I tell you, when you got a pool and you got kids, they're going to make friends very quickly in summer. And you suggest different depths and how functional it can be and the way you use it. And I can't not ask them how they're going to use it, because at the end of the day, they're investing a lot of money. We're finding that the last few contracts we've signed have been 200 plus. It's nothing to sneeze at. You want to get it right.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just sort of putting myself in the shoes of the builder, listening to this, and hopefully they're going, it sounds very similar. The plight of the pool builder sounds very similar to the plight of the builder endeavouring to build a home that's been architecturally designed, and the architect has sold the dream to the client. But then when it comes to building it, it's like, that can't happen. Or it can happen, but it's like quadrupling the cost or something like that. And so I'm hoping that the builders listening to this can see that this is an art form. It's an absolute art form, and it's so worth reaching out to people who have done it before, and really think about all the detail, the same as the builder thinks about the detail when they're building the home, rather than trying to have a crack at it themselves, because I think you're just probably opening up a whole can of worms. The client won't really get the best result that they could have, and it's probably a whole lot of thought and distress that the builder doesn't even need to have. They can get somebody like yourself on board to take care of that, and everybody gets a better outcome. So, having said that, whereabouts is Aqua Dreams situated? Whereabouts is your business?
Office factory is in Carrum Downs. I live on the Mornington Peninsula down in Rye. My parents are in Montrose, so we're kind of halfway between the two. We service Bayside Peninsula and a little bit of southeast. We try and stay away from CBD these days.
Yeah,
it's just too hard, to be honest, with all the ridiculous amount of permits you need for every bit of work and the parking, and it's just, with the demand at the moment, we honestly don't need to be chasing work in CBD. We don't cross bridges.
Don't like water? Don't like going over the top of water? Is that something? Got a water phobia?
We have to draw a line somewhere. Look, it'd be lovely if we could get majority on the peninsula, but look, it is all referral and word of mouth. We don't advertise formally. We don't. If you're trying to find us on Google, you have to type us in to find us generally.
Yeah.
We do rely a lot on our reputation. I suppose I'm very proud of that. Wear my heart on my sleeve. Sometimes that can get me in trouble because I can respond emotionally without thinking a bit more about things from a more level-headed perspective, because I think I'm just so passionate. The challenges that we face is not different from builders in general. Right now, our Aqua Dreams' biggest struggles is contractor communication. I've never seen it so bad. And I think it's just because of sheer demand, not enough trades in the industry to service the demand, pressure. And it's just really hard to manage no matter what we do. A very most recent example was a contractor whose communication was a bit lacking. And I just said to him on site, just please let me know what's going on. If you can't make it here and you're going to be delayed there, or you can just let me know, because I always try and relay this to the client so they know what's happening. And he'd said he's going to do this and do that, so that another trade can come in unimpeded to start their work, and I get a call from the client. None of that was done, and this trade is here to do that, and they can't do it because these things weren't done. And I'm just infuriated, because it's not hard to say, hey, we can't make it for this reason or that reason or whatever, and I'm just finding that's happening all too often with all trades across the board, sometimes some worse than others, but I don't have the answers for that. But I think it's just sheer demand at the moment.
Yeah. Well, yes. I personally come back to professionalism and the sort of things that you were talking about that you look for when you bring somebody into the association. It pains me to hear some of our members say, I got the job because I was the only one who called back. If that's the standard, we're all in trouble, and we're forever talking about it in Black Belt to say we can't lower ourselves to that standard, be the person who stands out because they deliver what should be expected as just courteous service. We've got to do far, far better than that. And the other question I just wanted you to answer for us is obviously people will be listening to this all over the country. You're down at the Morning Peninsula, but you are part of the association, the Australian Association. What should a builder do who should they reach out to be able to get the right direction, to get the right connection with somebody like yourself, no matter where they are in the country, if their project does entail a pool?
Yeah, certainly. If they just simply Google MPBAA, or Master Pool Builders Association Victoria, we have a lovely Heather there, a membership manager, and it is something that's very exciting at the moment, because we are making some, I can't say too much at the moment, but we're making some inroads as a national body. And the support is not Vic-centric like it was. I mean, we certainly have points that are more relevant to Victorian members at the moment, but we're working a lot of exciting things at the moment to be able to spread our wings, so to speak. But if you reach out to them, you could also ask for our current CEO, Chris Amatsis, who's a very, very passionate CEO who is probably a lot better versed than I am into what we're offering and the benefits that we can offer.
Yeah, cool. So just want to thank you for putting the time aside, sharing your story, sharing your knowledge, sharing your passion. It's really refreshing to have a conversation where we're kind of singing off the same page of the hymn book. We might do things slightly differently, but I think we're still heading in the right direction, making sure, you know, the customer's experience is the priority, improving our communication, improving our processes, so everybody involved in the project, including the customer, gets significantly more value and a higher quality experience. So thanks very much for being on the podcast, Joel.
Thank you.
So that's it for this episode of the Tool Shed, talking all things pools and the association involved. And you can see, guys, that there are lots of similarities, and my suspicion is that when we start to talk to other parts of the building industry, everyone will be thinking and feeling the same thing, and all we really need to start to do is understand from other trades and other businesses involved in the industry's perspective, because if we stay in our silos and we continue to point the finger that, you know, it's the engineers do this and the architects do that and the pool builders do this and the plasterers do that, and they need to get their act together, we're not hearing how we're contributing to the problem. And if we're okay to open up and listen from other people's perspectives. And I think today was a brilliant conversation from a builder's point of view, listening to a pool builder's point of view, and understanding that the problems that a home builder has with the client are exactly the same problems that the builder creates for a pool builder. And we just need to start to listen to those other perspectives and see how we can change things to make it better for everyone, so we can all come together and improve the industry. So that's it from me, and thank you again, Joel, for being on the show. We'll be back again with another Tool Shed podcast in the not too distant future. Keep your eye out. That's it. Bye for now.